Oregon is facing a major demographic headache. The state that once attracted America's brightest minds is now driving them away in record numbers. The Oregon dream once built the nation's most envied quality of life. Today, it's unaffordable, faces societal challenges, and it's pushing families towards the exits. Thousands are leaving Oregon as a result. So, in this video, we're going to break down, firstly, how Oregon's successes turned into failures, secondly, what forced America's model state into a cautionary tale, and thirdly, why this collapse could reshape how we think about progressive governance. Now, let's go back to where it all started. It's the 1990s. Oregon had cracked the code. The 1973 Land Conservation and Development Act preserved farmland and forest from urban sprawl. Urban growth boundaries kept cities compact and livable. Portland became the poster child for smart growth. But here's what made Oregon special. It wasn't just policy, it was culture. Keep Portland weird wasn't marketing speak, it was a promise. A place where you could bike to work past food trucks, where creativity mattered more than conformity, where housing didn't devour your paycheck. Now, there's so much incredible content about geography on this channel, but how do you actually remember and build on all of this information? That's where today's sponsor, Recall, comes in. It's an AI-powered tool that's changing how we learn and retain information. If you've ever read an article, watched a documentary, or listened to a podcast only to forget the key details later, Recall fixes that. It's an AI-powered knowledge base that organizes everything you save: YouTube videos, podcasts, PDFs, articles, even your own notes. And their brand new feature, Chat with Your Knowledge Base, lets you instantly ask questions across all your saved content. Instead of scrolling through old bookmarks, Recall gives you insights you can actually trust, because it's built on your curated sources. The most powerful way to use Recall is with their browser extension. With a single click, you can save a YouTube video, a Spotify podcast, or a long article, and Recall will summarize it instantly while storing it in your knowledge base. On mobile, it's just as simple. You can share content directly from your phone into Recall wherever you are. Another feature I love is augmented browsing. As you surf the web, Recall automatically highlights connections to things you've already saved, resurfacing insights you might have forgotten and showing you how your knowledge links together. Try Recall today at getrecall.ai and use the code EARTH25 for 25% off a subscription, valid until the 1st of November. Now, back to Oregon, where the cracks in housing, wages, and infrastructure began to spread. Between 2000 and 2014, Portland's population surged by more than 90,000 people. National magazines crowned it America's greenest city and most livable urban area. Everyone wanted in on the Oregon dream. But even in those golden years, something was building beneath the surface. A perfect storm that would chip away at everything Oregon had built. And it started with the very success that made the state so attractive. Oregon's appeal created its own problems through three forces nobody saw coming: artificial scarcity, demographic pressure, and policy miscalculation. Think about Oregon's geography for a second. The Willamette Valley houses 70% of all the state's population, bunched up into a narrow corridor, mountains on both sides, protected farmland everywhere else, urban growth boundaries, which sounded brilliant in theory. These tight town and city boundaries meant there was a lack of space for building and created scarcity in accommodation for its growing population. Then came the climate refugees. California's heat waves and wildfires sent thousands northward every year. Each new arrival competed for the same limited housing stock. Oregon's progressive policies attracted young professionals seeking affordable living, families escaping urban problems, idealistic newcomers drawn to the state's values. The math was about to become impossible, and the first cracks were already showing. Housing costs began climbing faster than wages. Infrastructure buckled under rapid population growth. The dream was becoming unsustainable, but nobody realized how quickly it would all fall apart. By 2020, the numbers told a brutal story. Portland's median home price had exploded 180% since 2000. That modest three-bedroom house that cost $200,000 20 years ago, well, that was now selling for more than $500,000. The price rises were felt across the state, in the mountain towns such as Bend to the communities in Salem and Corvallis. House prices were outstripping the average household income. The gap wasn't closing, it was widening every single year. But housing was just the opening act. The real crisis was emerging downtown, and it would shock even Oregon's most progressive supporters. Portland now ranks 4th nationally for homelessness per capita. The Springwater Corridor was transformed from a scenic bike path into a sprawling encampment, and downtown faced similar issues. The Pearl District, Portland's crown jewel of urban renewal, lost major retailers citing safety concerns. Business owners reported constant break-ins. Some customers were too intimidated to visit. Then came Oregon's boldest experiment. Possession of small amounts of drugs was decriminalized in 2020. The goal was noble: treat addiction as a health issue, not a criminal one. But the execution? Catastrophic. Drug overdose deaths rose sharply. In 2020, there were 824, rising to 1,833 in 2023. Open drug use became commonplace in parks and other public spaces. Businesses in downtown Portland suffered as a result. With footfall decreasing, there were around 40% fewer visits in 2023 compared to 2019. The area's tourism sector took a knock too. But urban decay was only half the story. Rural Oregon faced a completely different crisis that would drive an even deeper wedge through the state. Outside the cities, they weren't dealing with homelessness or drugs. They were encountering severe economic difficulties. The timber industry's implosion left entire communities stranded. Unemployment rates outpaced the US average. Towns that once thrived on logging struggled to maintain basic services. Healthcare was particularly hard hit, with access to treatment becoming increasingly challenging in Oregon's rural communities, worsening the feeling of isolation. As found in many places, a lack of opportunities in Oregon's rural areas created an exodus of young people to cities and other states. Here's what created the perfect storm: urban Oregon driving state politics toward progressive policies that directly conflicted with rural values and economic needs. The divide was about to become a chasm. 2020 delivered the final blow: environmental catastrophe. Oregon's wildfires burned more than 1 million acres. Entire towns like Detroit and Phoenix nearly completely disappeared overnight. Portland recorded some of the world's worst air quality readings for weeks. For a state built on natural beauty and outdoor recreation, this wasn't just environmental damage, it was identity destruction. Insurance companies responded predictably. Rates skyrocketed. Some refused coverage in fire-prone areas entirely. Rural residents found their homes uninsurable, impossible to sell or refinance. The Klamath Basin became a battleground between farmers, tribes, and environmentalists. The wildfires and the fallout after created water scarcity, which hit eastern Oregon hard. Climate projections suggested longer fire seasons. Severe droughts and natural disasters became increasingly volatile in the future. Oregon's core selling points were literally burning away. But the environmental crisis revealed something deeper: the urban-rural divide. Western Oregon drives state politics toward progressive policies, with the majority of the region's population living in the West. This makes rural communities in eastern Oregon feel forgotten. 13 counties in the east have explored leaving Oregon and joining Idaho instead, a state some view as having values and needs, which they are more closely aligned with. Feasibility work is continuing. The divide shows up in budgets. Multnomah County has more funding than entire states. It finances bike lanes, affordable housing programs, and environmental initiatives. Some rural communities struggle to maintain libraries and sheriff departments. Gun laws illustrate the tension perfectly. Urban legislators pass restrictions, which some rural residents see as attacks on their safety and way of life. The state that once prided itself on unity was fracturing across geographical and political lines. The data tells a story. Oregon has recorded a fall in net population over a number of years since 2020, decreasing by more than 6,000 a year in both 2021-22 and 2022-23, although this has now stabilized. Where are they going? States such as Idaho, Texas, Arizona, ones with lower costs and with policies which are more likely to suit their needs. Business relocations followed similar patterns. Companies cited costs, corporate taxes, regulations, and workforce challenges. Each departure removed jobs and tax revenue, making problems harder to solve. Young families faced impossible choices: stay and struggle financially, or leave and abandon community ties. College graduates increasingly chose elsewhere. Oregon trained them but couldn't keep them. Other states faced similar challenges with very different outcomes. Texas, they managed explosive growth through flexible zoning and business-friendly policies. Florida, they attracted retirees and businesses through tax advantages. Even Washington balanced environmental protection with economic development. Oregon could have chosen pragmatic progressivism over ideological purity. They could have addressed housing supply, sustainability, and economic development simultaneously. Instead, they chose symbolic gestures over structural reform. Most critically, they ignored the connection between housing, safety, and economic opportunity. You can't have livability without affordability. You can't have progressivism without prosperity. Oregon's struggles reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of governance. The state confused good intentions and social reforms with effective policy. Oregon created artificial scarcity through land use restrictions. They attracted demand without expanding supply. They addressed symptoms without solving root causes. Oregon didn't fail because progressive values and policies are impossible to be successful. It failed because they were delivered poorly. Oregon's story isn't over, but the current trajectory is unsustainable. Living there has become impractical for middle-class families seeking stability, security, and opportunity. The state that once represented American idealism now serves as its cautionary tale. The dream state can still wake up, but it requires admitting that good intentions aren't enough, and that ideology without results is just expensive virtue signaling. The question isn't whether Oregon can change, it's whether Oregonians will make the difficult choices that change requires. The lesson extends far beyond Oregon's borders, and it will be a learning example for other areas of the country and further afield. Any state can become Oregon if it prioritizes ideology over outcomes, symbols over solutions, intentions over results. The dream doesn't have to die, but it requires waking up first.